The unique thing about the main character of this story is that no matter how many times he dies, he is always reborn. It has happened so often that it's no longer amusing, and each time, he finds himself in a different world and era ranging from primitive civilizations to advanced societies that have conquered space. This time, his carelessness led to his demise in battle against a monster, resulting in yet another rebirth as a baby. However, he's a seasoned pro at reincarnation, so let's see what he makes of this new life. As he takes in his surroundings, the furniture and room decor suggest a setting reminiscent of the Middle Ages. Thanks to the expertise he has accumulated from countless past lives, he quickly deduces that this isn't Earth, making him wonder if he has landed in a fantasy world. Personally, he has always preferred sci-fi settings. The cleanliness, high-tech advancements, and conveniences made life easier. But given his current situation, he's at least relieved that he wasn't born into poverty. The presence of maids indicates that his new family belongs to the upper class of this world. However, more than anything, he's thrilled that his mother is an absolute beauty, and he's savoring every affectionate kiss from her. Although he doesn't recognize the language she speaks, he understands the emotions behind her actions. The way she clutches him tightly, afraid of dropping him, and the warmth in her eyes make it clear he has a loving mother in this life, which is a blessing in itself. Throughout his many reincarnations, he has encountered all types of mothers, but motherly love was never a guarantee. He has been abandoned at birth, exploited as child labor, and endured many hardships. This time, however, he has a good feeling this life might be much easier than the others. His thoughts are interrupted when a maid enters the room, offering to hold the prince so that the lady can rest. The mention of prince catches him off guard. He wasn't expecting to be reborn into royalty this time. However, he quickly notices that his mother doesn't seem particularly happy. The reason soon becomes clear when his mother, Rana, reminds the maid that not everyone considers him a prince. Rana came from a humble background. She was once a maid, just like the one before her, China. She tells China to drop the formalities when they're alone, as she doesn't see herself as superior. Rana believes that the only reason her son is being called a prince is because he shares the king's blood, but the truth is far less noble. His lineage is tainted in the eyes of the nobles. His mother's lowly origins have led the aristocrats and royal concubines to reject him, claiming he has no right to the throne or any power. Seeing his mother's sorrow, the baby instinctively reaches out to wipe away her tears, which warms her heart. She finds it touching that her son is trying to comfort her, though China dismisses it as nothing more than an infant's random movement. By the way, in this life, he goes by the name Errol. And despite what others think, we know for a fact that he genuinely meant to console his mother. He doesn't care about lacking succession rights or loyal followers. In fact, he considers it a blessing. Being ignored by the powerful aristocrats means he can live quietly, free from royal drama. This suits him perfectly. His gut tells him that this 101st life is going to be fantastic. Errol is feeling pretty great about his situation. With both royal and commoner blood, he sees it as hitting the jackpot. It allows him to stay away from the troubles of nobility. Meanwhile, Lady Rana and China continue watching over him. Rana looks at him, noticing how happy he seems, and wishes she could keep him that way forever. But she knows the world won't make it easy. When Errol hears the word power, he suddenly wakes from his thoughts and instinctively starts sucking his thumb. As he ponders his current situation, he realizes that in a world where everything revolves around family and rank, a prince with no claim to the throne is nothing more than a disposable pawn. With no power, no backing, and no future, he figures people will just use him until they discard him. But he quickly reassures himself his mother doesn't need to worry. He has confidence in his abilities, built over lifetimes of experience. 3 months pass, and Lady Rana watches Errol sleep, thinking he looks like a little angel. She strokes his hair, noting how much he resembles the king. Just then, China informs her that the carriage is ready. Rana hurriedly kisses Errol's cheek and tells him to be good before leaving. As the door closes behind her, it's revealed that Errol wasn't really asleep, he was only pretending. He chuckles to himself but quickly covers his mouth to avoid attracting China's attention. Being this charming is exhausting, especially as a baby with all eyes on him. But he has work to do. Sitting up, something no normal infant should be able to do, he prepares for his next step, gaining power. If there's one truth in every world, it's that strength is everything. As long as he is strong, no one will dare mess with him. With that in mind, he begins training, drawing from the knowledge of his past lives. One of his greatest achievements was developing a technique that allows him to train even in infancy, the origin creation Qigong technique. This method, which he first created in his 30th reincarnation, is a game changer. It allows him to cultivate power at an incredible rate, setting the stage for an extraordinary life ahead. Errol is training both his Qi and origin Qi simultaneously, and the best part? No one can even tell. Doing some quick calculations, he estimates that by the time he's 10, he'll have accumulated the equivalent of 60 years' worth of inner Qi, and by 20, that number will skyrocket to 180. Once he gets past the early stages, maintaining his progress will become effortless. He could even continue training while relaxing in Shayna's arms. To accelerate his growth, Errol channels his energy to stimulate his nerves, directing all the Qi to his brain and frontal lobe. The intense heat spreads throughout his body, making him sweat profusely and causing unbearable pain. As the energy builds up, he feels like he's on the verge of losing control. A scream almost escapes his lips, but he quickly stops himself. Hearing the faint noise, China rushes into the room. But when she looks at him, Errol is lying perfectly still in his crib, pretending to be asleep. She wonders if he needs a diaper change and leans in to check. Internally, Errol panics. Any physical contact could disrupt all his hard work. Fortunately, China smells nothing amiss and assumes he just had a bad dream before leaving. The moment she's gone, Errol's body feels like a furnace, energy leaking out in all directions. The strain is nearly unbearable, and he wonders if his body can even handle it. Still, he pushes through. He refuses to be controlled by anyone, no matter the cost. He is determined to use the origin creation Qigong technique to become powerful enough to live life on his own terms. Just as he regains control, another scream escapes him, this time loud enough for China to hear from outside. She bursts into the room, fearing something terrible has happened. She finds him drenched in sweat but still lying peacefully in his crib. Convinced he needs extra care, she rushes off to prepare a warm bath with healing herbs. The moment she leaves, Errol jumps to his feet, ecstatic that his training is finally yielding results. When China returns and picks him up, she praises him for being such a strong little guy. He simply smiles, relieved that she hasn't noticed anything unusual. Thanks to his mana concentration technique, his body constantly absorbs energy, even while eating or sleeping. Knowing that in just 3 years, he'll surpass most adults, and by 10, he'll be nearly unstoppable, fills him with excitement. As China holds him, she hears a strange noise from above but gets distracted by Errol's cheerful expression. Meanwhile, Errol is already envisioning his future, one where he's powerful, respected, and living like a king. He can't wait. It's only been 5 months since Errol was born, yet thanks to his mana absorption technique, his physical strength and inner energy far exceed those of any other baby. Even while crawling on the floor, he continues to push himself, knowing that soon, he'll surpass everyone around him. Just as he's deep in training, Lady Rana enters the room and lifts him off the carpet. She brings him a toy, something he wasn't expecting, and for a moment, he just stares at it. Noticing the hint of disappointment on her face, Errol quickly grabs the toy and starts playing, pretending to enjoy himself. Internally, he cringes at the sheer absurdity of the situation. Still, Lady Rana and China laugh at how happy he looks, calling him handsome and perfect. Errol secretly enjoys the praise but knows most of it comes from his mother's good looks. Even so, he decides to embrace this brief moment of being the fun baby, knowing this stage of life won't last forever. Suddenly, Errol makes it clear that he's not happy, leaving China puzzled as she tries to figure out what he wants. In reality, he's just hungry. He starts crying to make it obvious, and after some guessing, China finally realizes and gives him some milk. As he drinks, the adults start discussing financial troubles. Errol listens intently, learning that the household funds have been running low since yesterday. Even though he's a prince, there's barely enough money to provide him with proper food. This year, the mansion's budget has been drastically cut, and raising even one child has become a struggle, a shocking situation for a royal family. Errol recalls overhearing the maids whisper about this before. They said that Lady Rana has been eating less just to make sure others can survive. If she doesn't, nobody in the household will make it through the season. At first, Errol thinks it must be a joke, but when his mother speaks, her words confirm the truth. She remains optimistic, saying that as long as others survive, it doesn't matter if she does. Hearing this fills Errol with rage. How could they treat his mother like this? She may not be powerful or important in the eyes of the nobles, but she is still his mother. Despite giving birth to a prince, neither of them hold any real status or protection. Suddenly, he understands why she keeps leaving in the carriage she's been trying to meet the king. But judging by her constant failures, it seems like he refuses to see her. To Errol, this is pure cruelty. Even if the king doesn't care about Rana, she is still the mother of his child. How could he allow others to mistreat her like this? Overcome with emotion, Errol starts crying again. China hands him over to Lady Rana, and he immediately calms down in her arms. Even as a baby, he knows he has to do something to help his mother. He may not have much power yet, but he refuses to sit by and do nothing. Winter is approaching, and without action, things will only get worse, especially with the rising cost of heating. Lying in his crib, Errol puts his boss baby brain to work, determined to come up with a solution. Then, an idea begins to take shape. Just as Errol is racking his brain for ways to help, an idea suddenly strikes him. As he stares at the charcoal in the fireplace, he remembers that charcoal is made of carbon, the same element that forms diamonds. His sharp mind immediately sees a solution to their financial troubles. If he can transform charcoal into a diamond, he could change everything. Though he's itching to jump out of his crib and get started, he knows his tiny baby body isn't strong enough yet. Instead, he uses his mana to carefully levitate himself out of the crib. No one else realizes the true potential of charcoal, but to Errol, it's as valuable as treasure. Pushing aside his self-congratulations, he gets straight to work. While the rest of the house is asleep, Errol focuses his mana, combining it with heat to exert pressure on the charcoal. He pours every ounce of energy into compressing it, chanting spells to sustain his efforts. The process is grueling, and the force pushes back against him, but he refuses to give up. He pictures his mother's joy when she sees what he's created, and that thought fuels his determination. Then, at the peak of his efforts, a sudden surge of energy bursts forth, sending a cloud of soot exploding out of the chimney. Coughing slightly, Errol moves closer to the fireplace, sifting through the mess until his fingers finally brush against it, a sparkling diamond, created entirely by his own power. The sight of it leaves him momentarily speechless. Now, he just needs to figure out how to give it to his mother without raising suspicion. Feeling accomplished, he rests until morning. The next day, when Shaina comes to check on him, she's stunned to find Errol wandering outside his crib, completely covered in soot. She picks him up, baffled at how he managed to escape. At first, she assumes he must have been playing all night, but the state of the room makes her pause. The floor, fireplace, and carpet are all a complete mess. As she scolds him for touching the floor, Errol quickly comes up with a plan. He discreetly places the diamond in his mouth. However, China notices something odd in his cheeks and asks him to spit it out. When he refuses, she gently pinches his face, causing the diamond to tumble out. Her eyes widen in shock. She immediately asks where he got it, wondering if it was something he found on the floor. As someone who helps manage the palace treasury, she quickly realizes that this diamond isn't recorded in any inventory. Holding Errol tightly, she assumes he must have wanted to give it to her and thanks him with a warm hug. Errol simply smiles, knowing that his mother would probably love it, too. Later, wagons arrive at the palace, filling the empty kitchen storage with food and firewood. Thanks to the diamond, the household now has enough supplies to last for 5 years. Lady Rana, however, worries about the origin of the jewel. China reassures her, explaining that the castle had been abandoned for nearly a century before Rana took over. She even suggests that the diamond might be a blessing meant for Prince Errol. Rana isn't entirely convinced, but she's undeniably grateful. As Errol clings to her dress, he silently tells her to just hold on a little longer until he's strong enough to change everything. He dreams of a future where she no longer has to struggle. As if sensing his unspoken promise, Rana whispers that she'll make sure the king acknowledges his son. That winter, the fireplace remains lit, and the palace's finances finally stabilize. The changes become evident throughout the household. One day, as Lady Rana sits down for a meal, she notices the portion is far larger than usual. Concerned, she asks about the servants' rations. China assures her that everything is fine. Anna, who had previously quit, has returned, and the staff is being treated better now. But what stands out most to Errol isn't the food or the changes, it's the fact that his mother no longer looks sad. As he watches her, he realizes she looks her most beautiful when she smiles. Even though this is the coldest winter they've faced, it feels much warmer to him now that things are finally stable. A year passes, and China and Lady Rana are busy choosing an outfit for Prince Errol. They make him try on multiple outfits before settling on a particularly elegant one. Errol, confused by all the fuss, grows tired of the process. Eventually, he plops down on the floor and starts whining, surprising both Rana and China. China quickly realizes he's exhausted and tucks him into his crib. As she does, she casually mentions that Prince Errol is about to be officially recognized as part of the royal family. Errol is caught off guard. Recognized? What does that even mean? Meanwhile, Lady Rana is overjoyed that Errol has grown up without any issues. She wonders aloud if the king will finally attend his birthday celebration. China reassures her, saying the king was likely just waiting for the right moment, as misfortune often befalls newborns in the royal family. Listening to their conversation, Errol suddenly realizes what all the preparations are for his birthday. Lady Rana acknowledges that not everyone will be pleased about the banquet, but she sees it as the perfect opportunity to formally announce that Errol has royal blood. She's relieved that the Arisia royal family rules apply to him as well. Seeing her excitement, Errol figures that the banquet must be important to her. Then it dawns on him, if there's a banquet, nobles and royals will attend, which means he might finally meet the king. That night, the banquet for Prince Errol begins. The palace is lavishly decorated, and the extravagant feast clearly cost a small fortune. Errol is both fascinated and amused by the luxurious atmosphere, the elaborate decor, the extravagant food, and the elegant outfits worn by the kingdom's elite. It all feels surreal. Lady Rana picks him up, smiling warmly as she asks if he's amazed. Errol, looking around at the grand spectacle, can't help but think this is definitely a new experience. China remarks that this is probably the first time he has ever seen so many people gathered in one place. Lady Rana reminds him that he is the star of the night and gives him a kiss on the cheek. Errol notices the judgmental stares from the nobles and overhears their whispers about him and his mother, but he refuses to let it affect him. His focus remains on one thing: meeting his father, King Terrell of Arnesia. Frustration burns within him as he thinks about how the king has never cared about their lives. He sees this banquet as the perfect opportunity to finally make the king acknowledge him. As the royal family of Arnesia makes their grand entrance, the atmosphere shifts, signaling the official start of the banquet. Errol assumes the regal figures must be the queen and her family. He senses their strong presence as they approach. His gaze locks onto the queen, her children, his half-siblings, and most notably, the eldest son. Among them, a girl acts as if she is living in her own fantasy world. Errol mentally notes that he needs to learn more about each of them. However, they walk past him and completely ignore his mother. Lady Rana notices that the commotion might be overwhelming for Errol and tries to comfort him, even though he knows she is struggling herself. Still, she manages to make him laugh, easing the tension. Meanwhile, the crowd is captivated by the queen's beauty. Errol suddenly notices a shift in his mother's expression. It was calm before, but now something has unsettled her. He glances around and quickly realizes why. The king has finally arrived, radiating an intimidating energy that makes Errol freeze for a moment. He cannot tell if his father is looking at him or his mother. He wishes that being reborn came with the ability to read minds. It would be incredibly useful to understand what everyone is thinking. As the event continues, people start presenting him with gifts and congratulating him, acting as if seeing him is a momentous occasion. But when it is the imperial family's turn, their cold attitude toward him and his mother is unmistakable. They make no effort to hide their disdain, and their behavior stings. Errol wants to jump out of his mother's arms and confront the queen directly. How dare she act as if he and his mother are insignificant? To her, they are barely even people. Looking around, he realizes that nearly everyone in the room is just as fake and corrupt. For a fleeting moment, he considers calling them out in front of everyone, but he does not want to embarrass his mother. Instead, he plays along, pretending to be polite because that is what is expected. Hypocrisy is the norm here, unfortunately. All he wants is to leave before he falls asleep in his mother's arms. Just as he is about to drift off, he notices a young girl nearby, likely one of the king's concubine's daughters. She seems too young to be caught up in all this drama, yet something about her presence stands out. Thankfully, some of the mistresses have already left. When the banquet finally ends, both Errol and his mother sigh in relief at the same time. But the night is not over yet. The queen herself approaches them, making it clear that getting close to them is effortless, thanks to her son, the heir to the throne, who is always nearby. Errol cannot tell if she is boasting about her son or trying to rub it in. Either way, it is exactly what he expected from her. She comments on how sweet Errol is and how much he resembles his mother, but he does not believe a word of it. He is convinced that she is behind their struggles. Someone had to be responsible for the drastic cuts to their castle's finances. Their nights had been reduced to chopping wood just to keep warm, and his clothes were nothing more than patched-up scraps put together by servants. Meanwhile, the queen offers the usual empty pleasantries, wishing him a long life. But as she turns to leave, she smirks, leaving a bitter impression. Then, something unexpected happens. Lady Rana spots the king himself. He asks if she is adjusting to the castle, and she responds politely, though not entirely truthfully. Errol is not surprised. All he wants is for the king to take responsibility and support them like a real father. Suddenly, Errol starts crying loudly, which catches the king's attention. He asks to hold him. It is the first time in a year that the king has seen him. As he cradles Errol, he seems somewhat perplexed. Most of his children wail uncontrollably in his presence, but Errol simply smiles. Errol thinks it would be amusing if his charming baby grin could leave the king completely stunned. The king seems somewhat entertained by his reaction, even commenting on the possibility of raising him in the future. But Errol is not interested in staying still. He gestures for the king to put him down, leading the king to assume that he wants to walk. Lady Rana quickly corrects him, explaining that Errol is only a year old and cannot walk yet. At that moment, however, Errol decides to prove everyone wrong. Determined to make an impression, he takes his first steps right then and there, knowing that he is the star of the evening and wanting to show off. The entire room erupts in excitement as the guests cheer for his first steps. Even the king seems impressed, recognizing that Errol is trying to send a message that he is different from other children. Errol feels confident that this is just the beginning of proving himself. But as he reaches the table and tries to steady himself, disaster strikes. The entire table collapses, sending food and drinks crashing to the floor. Plates and glasses shatter around him, causing the room to erupt in panic. Even the king looks startled. But for Errol, this is all part of his grand little scheme, not just to prove he could walk, but to pull off a perfectly executed dramatic act. Errol lies on the ground, crying as if he's in the middle of a grand tragedy. The king quickly picks him up, checking for any injuries. Though Errol's clothes are soaked in wine, he appears unharmed. However, the king decides he needs a change of clothes. China steps forward to assist, but the king waves her off, wanting to handle it himself. What he discovers next leaves him speechless. Underneath Errol's stained garments, his underclothes are nothing more than scraps, far from anything a prince should be wearing. China looks bewildered, insisting she had dressed Errol in fresh clothes that very morning. As the king inspects the poor fit of the fabric, he realizes just how shabby and pitiful Errol's life must be. The nobles begin murmuring among themselves, whispering about how disgraceful the situation is. Frustrated by the hushed judgments, the king's commanding voice booms through the hall, demanding silence, sending a chill down everyone's spine. He then looks at Lady Rana, clearly trying to process how she and Errol have been forced to live in such conditions. Meanwhile, Errol feels a wave of relief. His plan worked perfectly. His clothes may be ruined, but they have conveyed the message he intended. In truth, he had been busy that morning while China dressed him, using all his tiny strength to stretch and tear at the fabric, making it look as ragged as possible. It hadn't been difficult, and with a little magic, he added the perfect touch of poverty to complete the illusion. If he were older and stronger, he wouldn't have needed magic, but it did the job. The king finally turns to Lady Rana, demanding to know how things had gotten this bad. How could their household have fallen so far? However, seeing how distressed she is, he refrains from pressing her further. Instead, he calls on one of his officials and asks for an immediate report on how funds are distributed to the concubines' estates. The king is visibly displeased. As far as he remembers, he had given clear orders for the budget to be shared equally. Everything should have been running smoothly. So why, of all places, does it seem as though Lady Rana and her son have been completely forgotten? The king demands the report immediately. The tension in the room rises as his secretary rushes forward with the documents. Everyone holds their breath, knowing things are about to escalate. Errol watches closely, realizing that, for once, his father is serious about uncovering the truth. He, too, is eager to see what the report reveals. Lady Rana, attempting to smooth things over, claims there must be some misunderstanding and asks for her son back. But Errol knows this is their best opportunity. As the room remains on edge, the king takes the report and reads it. His expression hardens as he processes the numbers. Then, to everyone's shock, he uses his power to set the documents ablaze on the spot. Errol is taken aback. He hadn't expected his father to be so oblivious to what had been happening. The truth is obvious, it's all the queen's doing. Turning to his wife, the king demands to know if she was aware of this situation. The queen tries to remain composed, feigning shock just like everyone else. But the king isn't buying it. His aura grows more intimidating as he reminds her that managing the royal budget is entirely her responsibility. Sensing danger, the eldest prince immediately steps in, perfectly timing his entrance to defend his mother. There's no way he's letting her face this alone. He insists that there must be some mistake, certain that his mother wouldn't do something like this. But the king only grows angrier. He snaps that it doesn't matter, leaders are always responsible for their team's failures. Because of her negligence, his youngest son was left hungry and poorly clothed. The eldest prince glances at Errol, guilt written all over his face, making the situation even more awkward. It's clear that he is nothing like his father, who is strong and commanding, nor like his mother, who is cunning and strategic. The king then turns to his eldest son and pointedly asks if he truly believes his mother had no part in this. Without waiting for a response, he directs his disappointment back at the queen. Lady Rana, still trying to defend the queen, insists that it's not her fault, it's hers. She claims she failed. The king, now thoroughly confused, questions what she even means by that. He tells her that simply being the mother of his child should have been enough to secure her position in the family. She looks embarrassed, and the king gently touches her hand, reminding her of her status and to act accordingly. This interaction clearly enrages the queen and her son. Meanwhile, the king orders an investigation to determine who is responsible for this mismanagement and ensures it never happens again. The queen, shaken, lowers her gaze and promises to take care of it. The king gives her one final warning: if this happens again, she will face consequences. The queen repeatedly apologizes, vowing to find the guilty party and make them pay. However, she still doesn't seem to fully grasp why the king is this furious. She continues insisting that she has no idea how this happened, unable to properly explain herself. Lady Rana, visibly distressed, tries to reassure everyone that this must be a mistake, continuing to defend the queen. Our protagonist can't understand why his mother is defending the very person who likely knows every detail of what happened. The queen promises that such an issue won't arise again, but only Errol sees through her act. She doesn't even bother to fake guilt. Instead, she simply intimidates everyone with her power. And just like that, the hero's birthday comes to an end, and somehow, the financial scandal is quickly resolved. Later, it's announced that the queen wasn't even involved in fixing the issue. Instead, a low-ranking noble family is accused of everything. Without much commotion, they are swiftly executed by guillotine. Palace servants gossip about how the aristocrats even confessed to the crime, yet no one can figure out where such a massive sum of money actually went. Most people seem relieved that the matter is settled, except for our young hero. He knows the real mastermind has escaped unpunished. The case is closed, but to Errol, it's completely unfair. He makes a firm decision: when he grows up, he will make sure everyone pays for their deception. But for now, he's still a baby, and his biggest concern is food. His only response to the situation is to cry, which quickly gets him spoon-fed. Satisfied with his current reality, he knows he needs to focus on strengthening his small body since he'll be stuck as a baby for a while. But after some thought, he realizes all he really has to do is eat and play. Once his belly is full, he decides it's time for a nap. Sometime later, he wakes up to the sound of a carriage arriving outside the house. He flies to the window to take a look, while his babysitter dozes off. He sees a group of people stepping out, and moments later, 3 of them enter his room: his mother, another adult, and a child. Then, he suddenly remembers his babysitter. If she wakes up now, his powers will be exposed. Panicked, he rushes back to her and starts pinching her cheeks to wake her up. Just then, the adults walk in and catch him in the act. His mother immediately scolds him for tormenting the poor nanny. The babysitter, now awake, notices that another mistress has arrived and quickly greets her. Errol observes the newcomer as well. The woman quickly assures them that no apology is necessary since she didn't announce her visit. That's when Errol realizes who she is: Philia, another concubine. Everyone in the room starts saying they would have properly welcomed her had they known she was coming, but Philia brushes it off, stating that she needs to speak with Errol's mother alone. Lady Rana isn't sure what this is about but assumes it must be important. While waiting for the conversation to begin, she accidentally chokes on her tea. Looking genuinely remorseful, Philia apologizes for her behavior at Prince Errol's birthday banquet. She explains that her family once held a significant role in military victories across the continent and was well respected, but their glory days are long gone. Their reputation has declined, and to make matters worse, there have been no male heirs born into the family for years. On top of that, rumors have spread that they've been struggling financially for quite some time. Lady Rana asks if Philia has come because of her family's troubles. Philia admits they are deep in debt and also mentions that the Queen's pressure likely contributed to their financial downfall. Then, she pulls out a bag of money, confessing that it isn't enough to solve their problems but offering it as a token of remorse. She acknowledges that Lady Rana likely despises her and her family. Just then, the door creaks open, and Philia's young daughter quietly enters the room. It becomes clear that Philia's main concern is shielding her child from getting caught up in the conflicts of the imperial family. Lady Rana, remaining calm, insists that she's fine and doesn't need anything, reassuring Philia that she isn't at fault. Philia asks her not to pity her, but Rana replies that it isn't pity, she's simply being honest. There's no reason for them to be enemies now. She makes it clear that she understands the situation and holds no resentment toward Philia's family. Instead of accepting the bag of money, she returns it, suggesting that it would be better spent on something nice for Philia's daughter. Then, in a casual tone, Lady Rana drops a shocking revelation: she believes the reason behind all of this is the fact that she serves her queen. This revelation stuns Errol, and suddenly, everything clicks into place. He finally understands why his mother is so disliked by others. He paces around his room, deep in thought, realizing just how difficult her life must have been. Cha-Aina notices his troubled expression and asks if he's okay. Quickly, he forces a smile to avoid worrying her. She assumes he's just being moody and goes off to train with Princess Kania. With everyone distracted, Errol takes the opportunity to eavesdrop on his mother's conversation with Philia. This time, he hears Lady Rana speaking more seriously than ever. She admits that escaping the Queen's oppression is impossible. Her primary goal is to protect Errol while he's still young and ensure that no one harms their family any further. Philia listens carefully, sensing that Lady Rana's intentions go beyond simple friendship. Still, she respects Rana's determination and agrees to support her. They both realize that when the time comes, they may have to rely on each other. Meanwhile, Prince Errol remains deep in thought, coming to a crucial realization: his mother has always been fully aware of the hidden power struggles between the Queen and the concubines. The situation involves both him and her, yet he also wonders about her next move. While Errol is lost in thought, a girl suddenly appears nearby, and he has no idea how she got there. Silently, he pleads with the universe to keep her away, but instead, she climbs into his bed, squishing his cheeks and calling him adorable. She treats him like a squishy toy, even pushing his crib around as if it's a game. Errol desperately wishes for anyone, even a passing truck, to rescue him from this chaos. Then, a cat arrives. At first, it seems like the cat also finds him cute, and at that moment, Errol knows there's no escape. Soon, the nanny mentions that the princess might visit. Naturally, the princess is eager to come over, and Errol realizes he's completely on his own, with no way out. Time flies, and before long, Errol is nearly 3 years old. Life feels like it's moving too fast, and as usual, he can't believe how quickly he's growing. He starts thinking about how much more he needs to learn before adulthood. Recalling fragments of his previous life, he wonders if he will ever get a chance to relive anything from it. Suddenly, the princess walks into his room and rushes toward him. Errol, in an attempt to play a little hide-and-seek, tries to avoid her, but she finds him almost immediately. Frustrated, he sulks, but the princess just wants to play. Before he can refuse, she's already running off to find a bigger spot, dragging him into another game. They end up outside, and it's clear that the princess has been visiting frequently, especially since Philia started coming over with the nanny's help. Errol doesn't mind too much, as these visits seem to be strengthening their bond. Even though he is still small, Kia believes he is already someone she can rely on. She tells him that when he grows up, it will be his turn to take care of her instead. The princess makes Errol promise to come as soon as possible, though he doesn't understand why she is so fixated on him. Before he can think too much about it, Kania excitedly declares that she adores him. She insists that playing with him is far more fun than with anyone else, calling him the best choice. Ria laughs, thinking she'll probably regret saying that when she gets older. Without warning, Kania picks him up, declaring it's time to play. She carries him off enthusiastically, but Errol feels like he's about to be crushed by her overwhelming energy. He silently begs for someone to save him, and just then, a maid steps in, pointing out that Errol must be uncomfortable. She scolds Kania, reminding her that, as a princess, she shouldn't be carrying heavy things since she is still a child herself. Errol feels relieved, finally, he's been rescued. However, Kania is far from happy. She protests loudly, insisting that she just wants to play. The maid suggests drawing or listening to classical music instead, but Kania is tired of such boring activities. She declares that she wants to swing a sword like her brother, Kyle. Errol watches as Kania practices with a stick, quickly noticing that her balance is completely off. The stick is too heavy for her, and her grip is all wrong. Despite this, Kania is fully immersed in her imagination, picturing herself defeating a powerful opponent and claiming victory. The maid tries to explain why Kania isn't allowed to train like Kyle and Lennon, but the princess is upset, unable to understand why they can and she cannot. The maid reminds her that, as a princess, she must remain elegant and refined, but Kania isn't listening, she's channeling some serious Mulan energy. Before the maid can stop her, Kania has already grabbed the maid's sword, excitedly chattering about swordsmanship. The maid panics and chases after her, begging her to return the weapon or at least take the sheath instead. Meanwhile, Errol watches from the sidelines, finding himself liking Kania more and more. As time passes, Prince Errol turns 5. Out in the fields of his land, he looks regal and bold, at least in his imagination. In reality, he's simply rocking back and forth on a toy horse, thoroughly enjoying himself. His maid and occasional horse trainer, China, encourages him to try riding a real horse, but Errol quickly dismisses the idea, saying it's too dangerous. China tries to hype him up, insisting that a prince his age should be interested in activities like horseback riding and sword fighting. However, Errol remains indifferent, claiming that princes don't necessarily have to do all that. China is clearly disappointed, he's not exactly overflowing with ambition. But here's the thing, Errol isn't just any ordinary child. This is his 100th life. He has lived through countless reincarnations, and if there's one lesson he's learned, it's that being too skilled only brings trouble. Every time he's been exceptionally talented, whether in sword fighting, magic, or something else, it has only attracted the wrong kind of attention, from people wanting to exploit him to those trying to eliminate him. So now, he's all about staying low-key and enjoying the privileges of being a prince without putting in unnecessary effort. Errol tells China that he needs some alone time, and while she's not thrilled about it, she agrees. Once she's gone, he shuts the door, kicks back, and just lies there, doing absolutely nothing. Later, they run into a bit of trouble when Shaina, clearly frustrated, asks why he hates studying so much. She points out that a 5-year-old prince should be eager to learn and grow, but Errol couldn't care less. He has zero interest in the world and is definitely not into cramming knowledge. With a sigh, Shaina half-jokingly says he sounds like someone who has lived 100 lifetimes. Before she can continue, Errol cuts her off, reassuring her that it's not her fault he's like this. Deep down, he decides it's time to just enjoy life for once, full YOLO vibes. Took him 100 lives to figure out how to take it easy, but hey, better late than never. Maybe he's just a chill guy. Who knows? Shaina reminds him that, by royal rules, he has to start studying now that he's 5. She pulls out some super basic books that were hand-picked just for him, but Errol, looking moody, grabs one and starts spinning it around like a toy. Shaina is not amused. She scolds him, saying books are for reading, not playing, and even tries to guilt-trip him by pointing out how many regular people would love to have the chance to learn but never get it. Errol remains completely unbothered. Instead of reading, he starts stacking the books into a mini-house. Trying to stay patient, Shaina tells him to knock it off and sit back down, but he's not listening. When words don't work, he goes full drama mode, whining and yelling that he won't study. Just then, the doors swing open, and his mother walks in, looking like she's had enough. And let's be real, nothing shuts down a spoiled brat faster than a mom's "I'm going to end you" glare. Under her watchful eye, Errol reluctantly drags himself to the library and starts studying, though not without plenty of complaints. Even as he pretends to study, he can't help but think about how ridiculous all of this is. If his parents really cared about his education, they'd make sure he was protected. But in his world, showing too much talent is a problem. The more skilled a child like him is, the more dangerous life becomes, not just for him, but for everyone around him. It's unfair, but that's just how things are. All he wants is a chill, peaceful life where nobody is at risk. As he zones out, Shaina snaps him back to reality, telling him to study hard and make people proud, as if that would actually fix anything. Errol thinks about it but decides it's way too much effort. Shaina doesn't let it go, though. She warns him that if he keeps acting like this, his mother will be disappointed. That does hit a nerve. In the end, he finally decides to put in some effort, not because he suddenly loves studying, but for his mom's sake. Even so, he stands firm on one thing: no sword training, no magic lessons. He's done dealing with the chaos that comes with being gifted. Instead, he starts thinking about other, less risky plans for his future. A few days later, a fancy carriage arrives at the concubine's residence. Shaina informs Errol that a mage from the magic tower is here to check his mana. If he has potential, they'll start training him in magic. Bad news. Errol knows that any decent mage would be able to sense the ridiculous amount of mana he's hiding. The only way out of this is to keep his power completely under wraps. As he walks down the hallway to meet the tester, he keeps his head down, trying to look as ordinary as possible. Shaina, trying to be supportive, tells him that even if his mana isn't impressive, he can still improve. But when they open the door, the mage's reaction says it all: shock. Like they just saw something they weren't ready for. The mage quickly stands up and looks directly at Prince Errol. As they silently size each other up, Errol watches the flow of mana within the mage, wondering how he must look through their eyes. The mage takes his arm to check his vitals and immediately notes that something feels off. Shaina, trying to hype him up, asks if Errol is special, but the mage hesitates. They're not sure whether to call him special or just plain weird. No matter how much they probe, they can't sense any mana from him, nothing at all.